Hi people. Review on the boxing at the weekend. Obviously, we start with Friday night. Tony Yoka versus Christian Hammer. I watched the fight. It wasn't a great performance by Tony Yoka. He got the job done in the end. Really, points decision. It was only over 10 rounds as well, and not the normal 12 rounds. So that was interesting too. Um, but yeah, he got. But there's rumours that I've seen online that he fractured his hand in the fight. He fractured his hand in the fight, so that's gonna obviously he's gonna be out for the rest of 2020. But it means he's starting 2021 might be a bit later than normal because obviously a fractured hand take a while to recover from, I believe. So yeah, so that was a good win for him. Obviously over in the States, um, Danny Jacobs got a split decision win over Gabe Rosado. And what was basically a lackluster fight from what I've heard, and um, yeah, I need to watch it back. But yeah, I've heard that he got the job done, but didn't look great. So I suppose questions are going to be asked of Danny Jacobs now. Um, like what will be next for him, because he has been a world champion, but really, what's there out there for him now? Because he is getting on in age as well, Danny Jacobs. So yeah, and then obviously we go on to the big fight of the weekend, you could say, which was Daniel Dubois versus Joe Joyce for the British, Commonwealth, and European titles. Yeah, so it was. I thought it would be. I thought experience would prevail, and I did predict that Joyce would win, and he did win. He stopped him in the 10th round. Um, Obviously the ending is controversial because he took a knee and then obviously stayed down for the 10 count. But Joyce, let's be honest, Joyce was winning the fight for me. He was at least a round up in my opinion, maybe 2 rounds up. He basically just out jabbed him, and he caused damage to that eye. He caused damage to that eye early on in the fight, so it was a sustained accuracy on that eye. Basically, won the fight for Joe Joyce, and obviously he didn't. He took some of Dubois' power punches and was to keep coming forward. So that was impressive. It was impressive to win the way he did against the puncher, the so-called puncher. So yeah, so now Joyce is the British, Commonwealth, and European champion. After the fight, he shouted out Usyk. He said, "Usyk, I'm coming for you." So I think next fight could be Joe Joyce and Usyk. Hopefully, if AJ vacates, it could be for the WBO title, world title. But um, but we'll have to see what happens with AJ if he was to vacate that belt. But for me, even Usyk, Usyk, Joe Joyce versus Usyk for the European title, but also as a final eliminator for the WBO belt would be perfect. Would be a perfect fight because the winner would obviously go with the European title, but then would be number one contender for that WBO belt. So I think that could be the fight to make next. I think Joe Joyce wants that fight. I think Usyk wouldn't shy away from that fight. It'd be interesting to see how Usyk would deal with Joe Joyce because I think obviously Derek Chisora gave him a few problems, and um, Joe Joyce is a natural heavyweight. He's powerful, he's strong, so it would be a really interesting fight. So I think that's the fight that should be next for Joe Joyce. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. It's going to be an interesting fight. But yeah, I think it was a good fight. I was impressed with Hamza Shiraz on the undercard of Dubois Joyce. And there's obviously another heavyweight fighter, David Adelaide, that looks good, but obviously he's 4-0, so it's very, very early on in his career. But he reminds me a little bit of AJ by his stature, and he's quite humble, which is quite good to see. So yeah, I think that's going to be good. So that's my review of the action. Um, one thing I would say as well about that Joe Joyce and Dubois fight, he beat him to the jab. Joe Joyce's jab didn't look much, but it was because of it. Joe Joyce's accuracy in the jab caused all the problems really in the fight. So I think Joe Joyce's jab is very underestimated. But yeah, that's my review for this week's fight. I'll be back on Thursday or Friday morning with um, previews of this next weekend's fights, which will include Saunders versus Martin Murray, and then obviously Yard versus Lyndon Arthur for the Commonwealth title. And then obviously over in the States we have Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia, which should be a cracker. Both good fighters. Be interesting to see how Errol Spence comes back from his car accident. So yeah, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and see you in the next one.